Hi, thank you for joining me. I am Tavish Cardiff. It is our Raw Materials Food Week, so let's dig in. Food Week is all about how we are fed emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically. Not only how we're fed right now, but how we have been in the rest of our lives. If you haven't figured out by now, the first 3 weeks kind of put together the basic raw material, what you started with to become you. Mentors Week starts with all of the people who taught us. Music Week wraps up all our inspirations and creativity and spiritual guidance. Food Week looks at how mentally we put those structures together. How do we view ourselves? How do we see ourselves? How do we set ourselves up for success? This is the first of the mental weeks. When we talk about our mental state, one of the things we look at with food is, have your basic needs always been met? We all arrive with a different set of circumstances, different type of mentors, different type of spiritual input, but food is where it gets real. This is full on nurturing. How did things get taken care of for you? Or how did you have to find ways to take care of yourself? Where were the areas that things were abundant and where were the areas that there was lack? I think that my family pulls in a lot of really good food. We're all good cooks, a lot of recipes, but prioritizing things around or over food is one of the issues in my family. As far as love and things like that, over nurtured in certain areas, under nurtured in others. This is where we examine how our mental structure comes together, how the emotional components of us and the inspired, creative, spiritual side of us comes together. What do those two things form? And then how does it make us see ourselves in the world or feel about ourselves in the world? Because this becomes really important to how we get to operate this vehicle that we have come in with. So when we talk about food, it's really a broad pillar. You could study this for the rest of your life and still not touch on everything, especially this particular pillar. Our mental stuff, it's so different for each of us, and the way we come together is so vastly unique. What we take in and how we see it, how we view it, how we think the world is, that's all so powerfully our own when we start to see how things make sense or don't make sense. And, we're talking not just from an intellectual standpoint, but also, does it resonate from the inside? Does it bounce off the intellect and off the soul? Can we get those two things to line up? So when we're really talking about food, like food for thought, how do we get the right group of nutrients together to serve us in all the ways that we need to be served, to feed us and to nurture us in all the ways? I wanted to talk a little bit about the origins of our raw material and Food Week. I was in Portland, Oregon before the pandemic, but there were a lot of homeless in the city, right? Just right in the city everywhere. And so you had to breathe with it. You had to be with it. You had to sit in there with it. And in the middle of downtown Portland is Powell Bookstore, I think one of the biggest or the biggest bookstore in the world. And I went in there and sat in the self-help section, looking around, feeling the inspiration of every single one of these authors and knowing that I couldn't possibly read every book on all of those shelves in my lifetime. I skipped across titles and skipped across authors and spent some good time just thinking about that genre, this healing, metaphysical type of area that I enjoy. And you'll notice behind me, not all of my books have to do with that. A lot of them do. And this isn't even a fraction of the books that I actually have. But this represents a nice cross section of the inspiration that comes through my life, the things that have mentored me, the things that I have seen spiritual connections with, and the things that feed me. I've got a whole section of cookbooks up there. And I love to cook. So aside from enjoying all of the things about nourishing, I like to immerse myself in actual nourishment. So here we are, back at Powell Bookstore. I'm checking it all out. I'm thinking about every single author, what they meant, what they wanted, and how each one of these stories is theirs uniquely. And I thought, how do we take the basic information out of each one of these beautiful stories and make it so that we could take the same base information and really hone in that? How do you take everything in each book and put it on a postcard? That was my inspiration. Because I've already done some classes, taken healing school and astrology and things like that, I was able to go into some meditation and come up with some very basic pillars. And I always say that this didn't come from my intellect. This was more a discovery. It has always seemed to me like it is a modern way to self-heal, self-help, self-understand, become aware in an age where we need our intellectual selves, but we also need to understand our relationship to our world, to our universe, to the energetic system that we are a part of, and the things that we watch our plants and animals be a part of. So I thought, how do we put it all on a postcard? That established these 12 pillars. And I think that each one of us spends time thinking about each of these areas or worrying about them or being afraid of them. And if we pull it together with intention, if we start to look at these areas of our lives with intention, curiosity, how do you make a plan, then I think we start to see ourselves being so much more successful in our lives than we thought we could be. We start to imagine better things for ourselves. We start to see the world differently. The exercise for Food Week that I would like to challenge everybody with is to go back and look at the areas in your life where you weren't nurtured and just take it to the ideal playground. Imagine what it would be like if those things really were nurtured. If, for me, my mother wasn't home after school, I went to a babysitter. So I can take it and imagine what would it be like if I came home to someone who made me do my homework and had cookies and milk and was, there to listen to every single detail of my day. That's not the parent I had, but I had a great parent. So it's fun to play around with what we didn't get, but to also know the value of what we did. The next mental week is values and ideals. So these ways that we're nourished set up what we value and what becomes important to us. So our imagination and our creativity become the tools now to heal things that happened back then. And then for the current time, just paying attention to this vessel that we have, getting to know it from the inside out. And, something about getting to know these things helps us start to want to take care of it better, helps us start to pay attention to the things that will nourish us in a way that feels good, because the chaotic world that we live in doesn't allow us to sit back and really appreciate everything that nourishes us. We've just passed New Year's. It's that time of year where we all start to take a look at our vessel and how we treat it. And at least for the next couple days, weeks, hours, we will put things in our body that feel nourishing and that feel like we are taking care of ourselves. And if we spent time in Food Week or considering Food Week, every time that we want nourishment, then we start to establish a rapport and a relationship with that pillar that has us naturally lining up in ways that support it. Each of these pillars is there, whether we see them or not. When we do start to see them, when we do start to have intention around them and use them together, putting together our thoughts, values, ideals, beliefs in ways that we can trace their origins, then we start to be able to manifest all the things that we want. Whatever you want on your table is before you. That's a lot to take in. Water, breath, alignment, nourishment. These seem like simple things, but they're a challenge. And our mental state keeps us from believing in what we can do. So we really take the time to break down why it is that we think the way we do, believe the way that we do, hold our bodies the way that we do. We create opportunities to change the things that we don't like and to celebrate the things that we do. and to honor ourselves and this journey, because in every single moment, we are perfect. Thank you for joining me. I will see you next week for ignorance. And that will round out the first 4 weeks of the very personal raw material, the rawest of the raw. Enjoy your week. Enjoy taking care of your emotional body and your physical body. I'll see you next time. Thanks.